Welcome to the channel. I am a doctor, and today I'll talk about seniors. This safe blood pressure habit is actually dangerous. For many seniors living in 2026, the daily ritual of monitoring blood pressure has become as routine as a morning cup of tea. Yet a growing body of cardiological evidence suggests that one of the most common safe habits, aggressive overmanagement of systolic numbers, may actually be inviting a silent catastrophe. We have been conditioned for decades to believe that lower is always better, leading millions of retirees to pursue a blood pressure reading of 120/80 with a zeal that borders on the religious. However, for a body that has seen 6 or 7 decades of life, the physiological reality is far more complex than a simple numerical target. The safe habit of pushing blood pressure down to youthful levels through aggressive medication and strict sodium restriction can, in certain geriatric contexts, lead to a state of chronic cerebral underperfusion. This is the great irony of modern senior health. In the quest to prevent a stroke caused by high pressure, many are inadvertently creating the conditions for a stroke caused by low flow. The danger begins with the hardening of the arteries, a process known as arteriosclerosis. As we age, the vessels that carry blood to the brain naturally lose their elasticity, becoming more like rigid pipes than flexible hoses. To push blood through these stiffened channels and upward against the force of gravity to reach the brain, the heart must work slightly harder, naturally raising the systolic blood pressure. When a senior uses potent antihypertensive medications to force that pressure back down to the ideal 120 range, they may be stripping the brain of its required push. This results in a phenomenon called orthostatic hypotension, a sudden drop in blood pressure upon standing. What many seniors dismiss as a brief dizzy spell or a head rush after getting out of an armchair is actually a localized ischemic event. The brain is momentarily starved of oxygenated blood, causing a flicker in neurological function. Over months and years, these repeated micro-drops in pressure contribute to white matter disease and cognitive thinning, effectively trading a long-term risk of heart attack for a medium-term risk of vascular dementia. Another layer of this safe but dangerous habit involves the aggressive restriction of sodium. While it is true that excessive salt can drive up blood pressure, the senior body requires a delicate balance of electrolytes to maintain blood volume and nerve conduction. Many seniors, terrified by the warnings of the late 20th century, have moved to a diet so devoid of salt that they trigger a state of hyponatremia. This condition causes the brain cells to swell slightly as the body attempts to balance osmotic pressure, leading to confusion, lethargy, and a significantly increased risk of falls. In 2026, we see a rising number of hospitalizations where the primary cause is not a cardiac event, but a catastrophic fall caused by low blood pressure-related fainting. The bone density of a 70-year-old cannot withstand the impact of a faint fall, yet the underlying cause is often the very medication and diet intended to keep them healthy. Furthermore, the timing of blood pressure medication, another habit taught by well-meaning practitioners, can be inherently risky. Most seniors take their primary dose in the morning, just as the body is experiencing its natural morning surge. However, if the dose is too high or combined with a morning diuretic, the blood pressure can crater mid-afternoon. This dip often coincides with the time seniors are most active, running errands, driving, or climbing stairs. A sudden dip in pressure while behind the wheel or on a staircase is far more immediately dangerous than a systolic reading of 145. The medical community is now moving toward a permissive hypertension model for those over 70, suggesting that a systolic range of 135 to 145 may actually be the safest sweet spot for maintaining cognitive clarity and physical stability. This move toward permissive hypertension underscores a critical evolution in geriatric care, the shift from treating numbers to treating the whole person. When a senior's body is forced into a youthful 120/80 mold, the metabolic cost is often paid in cognitive currency. In 2026, clinical focus has expanded to prioritize perfusion over pressure. This means acknowledging that a systolic reading of 140 may be the body's necessary baseline to ensure blood reaches the brain's watershed areas, the regions most susceptible to the slow damage of microvascular disease. By artificially suppressing this natural adaptive mechanism, we risk turning a healthy senior into a patient suffering from preventable fog and frailty. Furthermore, the social pressure to maintain a perfect chart can lead to an avoidant lifestyle. Seniors who feel lightheaded or weak due to aggressive medication may stop walking, socializing, or engaging in the very activities that preserve their neurological integrity. This secondary effect, sedentary decline, is a far more potent threat to longevity than a slightly elevated blood pressure reading. True vitality in the later decades is not found in a laboratory-perfect measurement, but in the ability to move through the world with confidence and a clear mind. By advocating for a personalized approach that allows for higher systolic levels, seniors and their caregivers can reclaim a quality of life that is defined by stability, energy, and the preservation of the self, rather than the fearful monitoring of a digital display. Reclaiming your push is the ultimate act of strategic preservation. This aggressive management habit is further complicated by the use of multiple medications, or polypharmacy. A senior might be taking a beta blocker for heart rate, a diuretic for fluid, and an ACE inhibitor for blood pressure. Individually, these are safe. Collectively, they can cause the blood pressure to behave like a roller coaster. The safe habit of never missing a dose becomes dangerous when the senior does not account for the variables of daily life: heat, hydration, and activity levels. On a hot summer afternoon, a senior who is slightly dehydrated but still takes their full dose of blood pressure medication is at an extreme risk for a crash. This crash can cause the kidneys to shut down temporarily or cause a watershed stroke, where the areas of the brain at the very end of the arterial branches simply run out of blood. The cultural obsession with the 120/80 gold standard has created a psychological barrier that prevents seniors from listening to their bodies. They see a reading of 140 on their home monitor and feel a sense of failure or panic, promptly taking an extra as-needed pill or skipping a meal to lower the number. They are chasing a ghost. The brain of an 80-year-old has different requirements than the brain of a 20-year-old. It requires a certain head of pressure to maintain the onboard computer's functions. When we over-medicate to satisfy a chart, we are essentially starving the engine to save the pipes. In 2026, the most sophisticated geriatricians are urging patients to prioritize how they feel over what the digital cuff says. If 120 makes you feel weak, tired, and foggy, it is not a healthy number for you. To correct this dangerous habit, seniors must embrace the concept of personalized pressure. This involves working with a doctor to find the highest blood pressure they can safely tolerate without damaging their organs, rather than the lowest they can achieve. It involves monitoring for symptoms of low pressure, just as vigilantly as one monitors for high pressure. These symptoms include cold extremities, unexplained fatigue, blurred vision, and the aforementioned dizziness upon standing. We must also reconsider the role of hydration. A senior who is aggressively managed for blood pressure but remains chronically dehydrated is living in a state of constant vascular fragility. The shift toward a more balanced view of blood pressure is a hallmark of modern longevity science. We are learning that the body's attempt to raise pressure as we age is often a protective adaptation, not just a failure of the system. By forcing that pressure down, we are overriding a biological safeguard. The safe habit of aggressive suppression is a vestige of an older medical model that didn't fully account for the unique hemodynamics of the aging brain. As we move forward, the goal is stability, not suppression. A stable pressure of 142 is infinitely safer than a pressure that swings from 110 to 160 throughout the day. Ultimately, the most dangerous part of the safe blood pressure habit is the lack of nuance. We have turned a complex biological metric into a binary good or bad number. For the senior who wants to remain sharp, active, and independent, it is time to stop the war against their own blood pressure. Reclaim your health by understanding that your ideal number is the one that allows you to stand up without swaying, think without a fog, and live without the constant fear of a digital readout. The wisdom of the body often exceeds the wisdom of the chart, and in the case of blood pressure, a little bit of extra push might be exactly what is keeping your brain alive. Beyond the immediate physical risks, the aggressive overmanagement of blood pressure has profound implications for long-term brain health and the prevention of cognitive decline. New research suggests that low normal blood pressure in the elderly is one of the strongest predictors of accelerated brain shrinkage. When the push is too low, the tiny capillaries in the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, the areas responsible for memory and decision-making, begin to collapse. These microvessels are so thin that they rely entirely on a consistent, robust blood pressure to remain open. Once they collapse, the neurons they support begin to wither. This process is silent, painless, and happens over the course of years, often perfectly masked by the senior's perfect 118/78 blood pressure readings. By the time the memory issues become apparent, the damage to the microvasculature is often irreversible. The habit of perfect blood pressure management also masks the early signs of heart failure. In many seniors, a naturally rising blood pressure is the body's way of compensating for a heart that is becoming less efficient at pumping blood with each beat. By artificially suppressing this pressure, we are essentially silencing the heart's SOS signal. Without that extra pressure, the blood begins to pool in the lower extremities, leading to edema and further straining the circulatory system. In 2026, the focus is shifting toward cardiac output, how much blood is actually reaching the organs, rather than just the pressure against the arterial walls. A senior with a high reading of 150 who has excellent cardiac output and high energy is in a far better physiological state than a senior with a perfect 115 reading who is constantly breathless and lethargic. We must also address the medication fatigue that comes with this aggressive habit. Taking 3 or 4 different pills to manage a single number creates a metabolic burden on the liver and kidneys. These organs, which also age, must process these chemicals daily. The side effects of these medications, ranging from chronic dry coughs to increased skin sensitivity and kidney strain, often diminish the quality of life so significantly that the senior becomes sedentary. A sedentary lifestyle is a far greater risk factor for cardiovascular death than a slightly elevated blood pressure. When the safe habit of medication prevents you from walking a mile or gardening in the sun because you feel too washed out, the medicine has become the malady. Furthermore, the safe habit of frequent home monitoring can lead to monitor anxiety, a condition where the act of taking one's blood pressure actually causes it to spike. A senior sees a slightly high number, panics, and the resulting cortisol surge drives the number even higher. This leads to an upward spiral of unnecessary medication adjustments. Geriatric specialists are now recommending blind monitoring or once-weekly checks to avoid this psychological trap. The goal is to move away from the obsessive model of health management and toward a mindful model. This means paying attention to the quality of your sleep, the depth of your breath, and the steadiness of your gait, rather than the flicker of a digital screen. In the social circles of the elderly, there is often a sense of pride in having the blood pressure of a teenager. We must change this narrative. A teenager's blood pressure in a 70-year-old body is a red flag, not a trophy. It is time to educate both seniors and their families that a robust pressure is often a sign of a body that is fighting to stay oxygenated and vital. The danger in the safe habit is the refusal to accept the changing needs of the aging body. We are not stagnant machines, we are evolving biological systems. As we look toward the future of senior health in 2026 and beyond, the most important tool in your arsenal is not a pill or a cuff, but the courage to challenge outdated medical dogmas. It is the ability to say to a physician, "I know the chart says 120, but my body feels better at 140. This transition from compliant patient to active self-advocate is the only way to navigate the treacherous waters of geriatric blood pressure management. Your goal is not to have the best numbers in the doctor's office. Your goal is to have the best life in your own home. Protecting your brain and your balance requires a nuanced, careful, and sometimes higher approach to blood pressure. The aggressive suppression of blood pressure is a double-edged sword. For seniors following the lower is better rule, it is time to reassess. Are you protecting your heart at the expense of your brain? The path to longevity lies in a permissive range that honors the aging circulatory system. Reclaim your vitality by letting go of numerical obsessions. Drink water, eat mineral-rich salt, and move your body to keep your mind clear. Oversuppression also creates a silent kidney crisis. As pressure-dependent organs, kidneys require arterial force to filter toxins. When medication pushes pressure too low, filtration drops, leading to a buildup of metabolic waste that causes brain fog. Allowing a slightly higher natural range enables efficient detoxification and higher energy. Furthermore, focusing on a single number ignores pulse pressure. In seniors, the top number rises while the bottom often drops, signaling arterial stiffness. Forcing the systolic number down can push diastolic pressure below 60, starving the heart muscle of blood. This focus on one number disrupts the harmony of the entire vascular system. The safe habit also intersects with dietary myths. Many seniors avoid animal fats and sea salt, which are essential for arterial integrity and blood volume. A diet of processed grains and seed oils increases inflammation, causing further vascular fragility. Instead, a nutrient-dense, anti-inflammatory diet supports vessel health and natural stability. In 2026, vascular fitness is replacing passive management. Exercises like Zone 2 cardio and light resistance training improve vessel elasticity, allowing the body to regulate itself without the crashing effect of pills. Finally, addressing underlying issues like sleep apnea is more effective than masking overnight spikes with more medication. By stepping away from aggressive management, seniors find a peace and agency that fosters true health. Trust your body over the shadow of the cuff. The narrative of the dangerous high has been sold so effectively it has become a form of medical gaslighting. We tell seniors their bodies are failing at 150, when often their bodies are performing a miracle of compensation to keep them standing. The true danger is losing this perspective. In 2026, the message is empowerment. You are the master of your vascular destiny. Do not fear a number reflecting the strength of your heart. Fear one, reflecting the exhaustion of your brain. Choose the path of robust, permissive health. The journey toward balanced senior health requires departing from the conveyor belt of standard practice. Often, a senior is prescribed medication after a brief visit where pressure was high due to white coat syndrome. Once written, the prescription is rarely questioned. We advocate for ambulatory monitoring, wearing a device for 24 hours to see what pressure does during real life before starting a pill. This is the difference between treating a patient and treating a snapshot. The safe habit also fails to account for circadian rhythms. Blood pressure should be high when active and low during sleep. Aggressive, long-acting medications often flatten this curve, preventing the natural nocturnal dip. This flatline effect contributes to feeling perpetually tired. A healthy vascular system is reactive, surging to catch a bus and dropping while reading a book. The dangerous habit turns a dynamic system into a static, unresponsive one. We must also recognize the influence of industry in setting ideal targets. As thresholds drop, millions of new patients are created overnight. While early intervention helps the young, the same logic does not apply to a 75-year-old. These shifting targets often represent market expansion rather than medical necessity. By holding to traditional higher thresholds, seniors can avoid a cascade of intervention that diminishes quality of life. The concept of bio-individuality is the final piece. Two 70-year-olds can have a pressure of 150/90. For one, it is strain. For the other, it is optimal operating pressure. Factors like weight, history, and genetics play a role. The one-size-fits-all model ignores the unique history written in your arteries. The theme is clear. The safe blood pressure habit is a trap of oversimplification. It is a quest for a youthful number in an aged body that often sacrifices the brain to save the heart. Be bold. Question the cuff and the prescription. Prioritize your balance, clarity, and energy. Your blood pressure is a vital sign to be understood, not an enemy to be conquered. Let your habit be one of deep breathing, joyful movement, and a steady heart. Trust your intuition and live with the robust push your body requires. Your golden years should be defined by the strength of your spirit, not the suppression of your vitals. Protect your flow.